Good evening. We'll call this school board meeting to, sorry, my braces are still, sorry. We'll call this regular school board meeting to order. We have an agenda in front of us and an HR addendum.
Robin,
Go ahead.
I'd like to make a motion for approval of the agenda with two changes.
Okay.
One, in addition to the HR addendum, and two, a request to move item D from the consent agenda to business for the purpose of making a statement.
Okay. So if we move that 5D down to now 5 or 6E, does that seem reasonable? Okay. So we have a motion on the floor with an amendment. Is there a second?
Second.
Okay, any discussion on the agenda with the amended agenda in front of us? Okay, all in favor, please vote by saying yes.
Yes.
Any opposed? No. Okay, we will move forward. Recognition of the audience. We do have two members that have signed up to address the board tonight. I will read a little statement before you get started, and then for those of you that have asked to speak, just step up to the microphone there and we'll get you taken care of. At this time, the board will hear comments from the public. We ask that each speaker who has signed up to address the board state their name and address for the record. We would also ask that speakers refrain from using this forum to criticize or complain about a specific employee by name. The board is interested in your comments and will listen carefully, but is not obligated to respond or to debate issues in this forum. Should you desire a written response to a specific question, you may request it. This evening, each speaker will be allotted a maximum of 5 minutes to speak. Our first commenter is Tanya Redroad. If you want to come up to the microphone, please, Tanya.
So like you said, my name is Tanya Redroad. I work with Federation of Families for Children's Mental Health. Today I just came in mostly because with the Level D's conversation and stuff. For our organization, we get a lot of parents who come in and that with concerns with what's going on in schools, maybe, or in some of the juvenile systems. So we're kind of all over. It's not just schools, but it's been pretty common the past, I'd probably say 6 months for me. I'm new in my position, so I just started in December, but this is a conversation that has been at my forefront all the time from my parents, or from my parents that I work with. So with all that coming up and that was happening, we decided to do kind of a table talk, and I can pass these out just so you can see what it was. An event that brought parents together to have their ideas kind of heard together and support each other, because I think sometimes I get so many different things separately, but how do I bring that collectively and get the parents talking about what's going on, and then also kind of maybe hear their ideas, and how do I get them out to the people who need to hear them? So, I just want you to know I'm not here to, do anything other than give you information. So I'm going to hand these out, and then actually the next speaker is going to give you kind of the outcomes of what happened. And I'm just going to explain a little bit about how we gathered some of the outcomes.
Great, thank you. We'll get those passed around.
So what we decided, some parents that came forth, probably about 5, 6 parents who came through and were able to really, they sat with me, they came in my office, and they're really kind of concerned on how to do this. And so we kind of decided to do a table talk, which we actually kind of use the World Cafe, where people kind of come and they sit at each table and we have a topic, and then they're able to address that topic in a safe way and have their voice heard. And then we had somebody that would write that comment down that was really stuck out for them, and that was their main concern. So then with that, the next speaker, I'm going to let Victoria talk a little bit about those outcomes and kind of what happened, and I'll let her come up.
Thank you, Tanya. Nice to see you. Victoria, just for the record, just kind of follow the same system. Introduce yourself and your address and everything, and then you can present.
Hi, I'm Victoria Johnson. I'm with the Family United for Advocacy. So if you look at the table talk, we did a collaboration in the bottom. It's between the North Dakota Federation and the Family United for Advocacy. We came together. And the main point for this conversation, when we had the table talk, it was not about Victoria, it was not about Tanya. It's about us listening to the parents. So we just there to listen to what the parents had to say, and we took the notes and we just listened to them based on their conversation and some of their concerns of what they are going through in their school and stuff. So in each topic, you can see when we talked about the IEP, I'm gonna just give briefly because we have a lot, so I'm not gonna go through every single one of them. When it comes to the IEP, parents felt as their voice are never getting heard. So when they go into IEP, they're sitting in that table with all these teachers and everybody. When they speak, they feel like their ideas or their concerns are not getting addressed, and they just get talked over. And so the school just decided this is what we want. Transparency was another issue parents had, that they don't feel like there's a transparency, and that professional ethics issues that they face, poor with follow-through and implementation of what's been said at that table. So when we go down to, that's just on the IEP part, and when we go down to the restraint and seclusion, some parents, we had a lot of parents. We didn't expect parents to show up, actually, because we did not have media. We did not advertise this anywhere besides on Facebook. And the reason why we did that is because we want parents to feel safe. We want parents to know that we're not here for the attention. We don't want media. We don't want this. We really want to hear their voice. So we kept media out of this. We kept, we just kept this just parents. And so, and we did this on a weekend on a rainy day, 2 days before, school starts. So we didn't expect parents to show up, and parents did show up. And we provide childcare for the parents also, because we know that's a big problem for parents. They don't want to come to events because they don't have childcare. So we had volunteers who volunteered to babysit for us while we do this with parents. So it made it really convenient for parents. So when it comes to the restraint and seclusion, some parents had concerns with the Fargo Public School policy on how they definition of their seclusion is compared to the federal level, what seclusion is. Fargo Public School do not see when a child is being kept in a room and child cannot leave that area. Fargo Public School do not see that as the child's being secluded. They see that as the door is open, the child can leave, but really the child's not leaving. They're blocking the door with 5 staff members standing there, and child cannot leave. Technically, that is getting the child getting secluded. So parents had a huge, everybody in that room actually had the same concern. We had communication. Parents feel that they're not getting communicated to when things are happening in school with their children, and children are coming home with unexplained bruises. And another parent had a problem with her child who's nonverbal, comes home with bruises, and because the child cannot explain what happened, so she doesn't know. And then disciplinary, how they're using restraint and seclusion as a disciplinary method. That was a huge concern for parents, and everybody in that room raised hands when we asked. Again, this was not about Victoria, about Tanya. It was just about us listening to them and just take the notes and counting how many people are having the same concerns. Everybody in that room had that concern. When we go down to fear, number 3 topic, we had a lot of parents. One of the biggest one that really hit me was a mom, and everybody raised their hands when I asked, how many of you here feel the same way? A mom said, when I see the 466 phone call, that number pops on my phone, or the 499, my heart stops. Because I feel as my child is hurt in school, my child is injured, my biggest fear is when I get that phone call and I see that number. I don't breathe. I just don't even want to answer, but I know that I need to answer it. So that's huge. And when we opened this table talk, we invite everybody. We didn't care where you're from. We actually had a mom that drove from Newtown, right? We had a mom from Newtown, actually, who came to this. So it was surprising to us, people that came to this table talk. And then another fear was that law enforcement, the school will call parents and say, if you don't come get your child, we're going to call the police on you. And so parents had that's a big fear, because now they have to deal with the police for something that it could be handled. And then CPS getting called on parents. We had more in the fear topic than we had everything. I mean, we had about almost 13 long, in writing every single thing people are complaining, and everybody responded the same way. So that was a huge concern to me as a parent, and sitting there listening to parents. And then losing jobs. A lot of parents with those children with special need, they feel like they're losing their jobs because they're getting phone calls from school 5 times a day or, in a week, and they have to constantly leave because if they don't, they get that threat. We're going to call law enforcement, we're going to call social services. So they leave their job and they're losing job. So we ask parents, how many of you lost your job because of school calling you? Every parent in that room raised their hand. And we asked, how many of you went back and find another job? Only few raised their hands. And I go, how many of you unemployed right now? Most of them raised their hands. And we go, why is it? It's because the school called me so much, my job had to let me go. So that's a huge concern.
Thank you for organizing your thoughts so thoroughly. Let's maybe wrap it up in the next minute, if
Yep.
that's okay, Victoria?
Yep.
Thank you.
So then I'll just do the solution quick, and then there was not, they had a lot of solution there and what they think could be done differently, and I'll be happy to give that to the school if they need that. One parent just complained about the procedural book. It's written grade 11 instead of grade, 5, because they think, they don't understand that. And then that bringing their concerns forward to the school board was one of some of the solutions, and how to change maybe some of those policies and things like that through legislators. So, but that was it. Do you guys have any question or anything?
Thank you for your presentation, ladies.
Yeah.
And thank you for your work. And this is North Dakota's model, right? Or alliance, right, Tanya? Got it. Thank you. Have a nice evening, ladies. Okay, next item on the agenda, we run into staff reports, and we have Mr. Marcourt here. Like to kick us off?
Hello, I have no report tonight, so moved right along, but thank you.
Thank you. Okay, 4B, Woodrow Wilson High School report. Would you like to make introductions, Dr. Gandhi?
Sure. I will hand it over to Principal David Berkman, and I see that he has his team here as well, so I'll let him go from there.
All right, good evening, superintendents and school board and cabinet members. There's a lot of great things happening in this district from the north to the south, to the east to the west, and it is my pleasure tonight to share a couple of programs doing some really, truly excellent work with students across the entire district. So, first of all, Woodrow Wilson High School. There's a team of 4 of us presenting, and I will do introductions before we get into the presentation. Brianne Bloomquist, social studies teacher, Jenny Root, counselor, and Jim Keel, assistant principal. All 4 of us will be handling a portion of the presentation. So again, sharing some of the great things happening at Woodrow Wilson High School, and like I said, understanding some of the great work being done across the district. First slide you see, Woodrow Wilson High School Diploma. We do have GED in the program with the Adult Learning Center, but Woodrow Wilson, we are there for a high school diploma. In terms of what brings students to Woodrow, there is no cookie cutter Woodrow Wilson High School student. Students come to us for a multitude of reasons. We call ourselves a choice school. None of the North, South, or Davie students are required to come to Woodrow. A new student coming into the community is not required to come to Woodrow. It's a choice to come to Woodrow. And through an orientation process of them understanding what Woodrow is and isn't, they can make that informed decision if they would like to come to Woodrow, a choice school. What some of our seniors have told us on the senior survey, you'd see results from 2017-18 and 2018-19 around respect, feeling safe, staff treating me with respect, students respecting each other, and then at the bottom, my teachers are understanding when students have personal problems at 98%. So some results that we're very pleased with at Woodrow, and it's a lot of great teamwork and deliberate and strategy to keep those numbers up there. Just to understand Woodrow in terms of what does a day look like, the AM1, AM2 at the top is a 2.5-hour super block. There's a 1-hour lunch break. The afternoon is a 2.5-hour super block. Looking at the bottom of the page, instead of semester at about maybe 85 days or 84 days, we see a sixth semester at 29 days. 29 days at 2.5 hours equates to a traditional semester, very similar minute-wise. So a student finishing a class in 29 days at 2.5 hours is a typical student experience. Student A, you'll see, has AM Algebra 2.2, Semester 2, Algebra 2, Semester 2, all morning long, hour for lunch, and then Junior English all afternoon. The early bird art, we're glad to be offering art 8 to 9 o'clock. Currently having Tracy Melendez from North doing art at Woodrow. Student B, AM1 guitar, AM2 US history, and then in the afternoon taking biology and a Phi-Ed course. So between two and four classes per day for Woodrow students. Again, back to the senior survey. Agree or strongly agree. My teacher's having high expectations for me. Setting goals at 96.7. Teachers expecting me to do my best. High quality education program. And bottom one, feel ready for the real world to write, read, math process, tech skills, and learn on my own, and problem solving at 93%. A bit about the profile of Woodrow students. As a board, you might wonder, well, is it North, South, and Davie students? Students who are new to the community, who goes to Woodrow? In the far right column, we had 64 graduates last year. 61 students responded to the senior survey. And we had 18 Davies, 17 from North, 20 from South, which would put us at 55 of the 61 who filled it out. However, of the 55 that filled it out, 11 of those students had spent less than a year at Davies, North or South. So you could say that 55 minus 11, 44 of 61 respondents are Fargo Public School students, and roughly about 17 or so new to the community. Any questions on this particular slide? All right, moving on. Understanding some more about Woodrow, since a sixth semester is 29 days and a student could conceivably finish their last class in September or October or November, we have an informal graduation walk when a student finishes their last class. Currently this year we have 4 signatures on a scroll. You can see on the right picture or left picture there's a piece of paper on the wall. And those students have finished 4 so far this year. We're at 4 graduates. Looking in the middle 2 pictures down the hallway, it looks like there's a whole lot of bodies, and if you could zoom in, you'd see people clapping and kind of whooping it up, saying, hey, congratulations, way to go. And we tell the graduates a neat way to inspire others. All you have to do is smile and walk down the hall, and you've just inspired 60, 70 classmates that, hey, you can do this. All right, our ethnicity, the far 4 left columns are our entire student body. That's not just our seniors. And then in the far right side, we did put in the demographics for our graduating class. So 2018-19, for example, you'd see 57% white, 11% American Indian, 24% African American, et cetera. And then on the far right side, you would see the ethnic cultural breakdown of our demographics for graduates. And then again, pausing here if there's any questions or clarifications that you would like. All right, continuing on. We do also have a cap and gown ceremony held at Woodrow Wilson High School. This year slated for May 29th, 2020. Speaking of this, this slide is from our orientation, and we sort of tongue-in-cheek ask all of the students to orientation, is a Woodrow diploma better, same, or worse than a North-South or Davies diploma? And we tell them, if you don't know the answer to this, this is the most important question of the night because you're deciding to change schools. And the answer being, of course, well, it's the same. It's a high school diploma. And then we follow that up at the bottom of the page saying, well, you're right. Woodrow students do the same things that Davies North and South seniors do. And then the next slide would show what our most recent group of seniors decided to do after high school. The 54/64, there were 64 graduates, 54 respondents to this question, so there are 10 students who I suppose would probably be under other plans as well, of the 64 graduates. We looked at this as a Woodrow team and didn't see necessarily a lot of changing data throughout the years. A majority of students looking at a 2-year vocational, and a decent-sized chunk looking at 4-year college, or the workforce, or the military. One of our PLCs will be presenting later tonight a little bit on some more pieces to go with this post-secondary plans. Snapshot, if you do come to Woodrow, there's always a puzzle going on in the library, 3rd floor. Brain break. And at this point, I'm going to hit the pause button on my presentation part. You'll see up here that we kind of shift gears to school accreditation advanced through advanced ed, now called Cognia, continuous improvement and a school improvement plan. The numbers you were looking at earlier with students feeling safe, students feeling accepted, it all intertwines with our improvement plan and our teamwork, our growth, our trajectory that we're on. And we do think it's worthwhile for you to see, oh, all right, well, what is the Woodrow team collectively working on? So Mr. Keel is going to lead you through our SIP goals.
Good evening. Our SIP goals, school improvement process, is a continuous process. We have 4 major goals. The first of those goals is an accolades growth. And our accolades program is our honors program. How do students achieve accolades? They hit the mark. They're getting a quality GPA, 2.8 or higher. As they exit the class, one of the scores they are given is called a PR. Their punctuality and reliability. It's the student showing up for class on time. Are they prepared? Are they working? Are they making good use of their class time? So as they exit, they get a score on a scale of 1 to 4. Their average PR needs to be a 3 or higher. And they need to be completing class on time within that 6-semester timeline or less. And they need to have a good quality character, which means they're not talking to me about suspensions. So those are the criteria. So students who hit that are considered an accolade student. We have a breakfast for our students in the winter, and then also we have a graduation accolade ceremony in May as well, which is a lot of fun. Our goal is to increase the number of students who graduate with accolades. We want to set the bar high for our students. This is an easy way to do that because as the teachers have conversations with students about completions, hey, you can hit accolades. Anybody can do that when they come in the door. They just need to take care of the process. So our goal is to continue increasing the number of students, and you can see we've had steady growth with that. The other piece of that puzzle is we want to encourage our staff to have those conversations with their students. All of our students are assigned to a mentor or an advisor, and so we're trying to increase the number of advisors who are working their students through the process as well. So students getting those continual reminders, hey, you can do this. There is a correlation between students engaging in the advisory program, the accolade success, and graduation, and I'll come back to that in a little bit here. So the advisory program is another piece of the puzzle. Like I mentioned, all of our students are assigned an advisor. They can earn units. When they get to 80 units, they actually earn a half credit. Students can earn up to a full year, a full credit of advisory during their stay at Woodrow. So there are a number of different pieces to that 80 units. So there's completing courses, they get the PR points for that. Checking in with your advisor weekly, you get points for that. Attending advisory meetings, which is like our conferences. We do that 5 times a year. Community service is a part of it. Post-secondary exploration is a part of it. There's a project that the student has to complete as a part of it. So it's a pretty comprehensive program. The student needs to do quite a bit of work to get to the advisory credit. But we want to encourage students to engage in that. And you can see here from the data, we are increasing the number of students who are engaging in that process. I think in the last 2 years, we've had 1 student who earned the advisory credit that didn't complete graduation or is still working on it. So students who engage in this process are making the efforts to become a graduate of high school. Again, we're also trying to increase the number of mentors who are granting that credit. In a perfect world, every staff person who is a mentor is helping their student get through this program. Questions about that goal? Okay. Goal number 3 is an academic goal. It is about Algebra 2. And if you've looked at the choice ready criteria, you'll note that completing Algebra 2 is one of those pieces of demonstrating college readiness. Number 1 indicator of a student's potential for success at a college is completing successfully Algebra 2. And so this data is the number of Woodrow students who complete Algebra 2. And so many of our students who come in the door have already completed the Algebra 2, so we're not including them. So these are the students who actually came to Woodrow Wilson and finished the first and or second semester of Algebra 2. So last year we had 7 students finish that. We also want to increase the number of students engaging or trying Algebra 2 because the more students who try it, the more likely we are to have some success with that. So encouraging our students to do that through our advisors, increasing the number of students taking Algebra 2. And then lastly, the volunteer or community service programming. We encourage our students to get involved. We're really lucky to be in the Agassiz building. We have 14 programs under one roof. And so there's lots of opportunities, as you can see on the right. Those are some examples of opportunities that our students had available to them last year to work in their community, to engage with their school community. The more engaged that students get with their school community, the more likely they are to stick around and graduate. Also, completing 25 hours or more is one of the choice-ready criteria again. And so we're looking at how can we best prepare our students for what happens after high school. Questions about these? We also have fun. Last year, we had a pizza luncheon with one of our Supreme Court justices. And so we do have some fun as well. We have a lot of good times. Last year, we also had an art project on the 2nd floor. I encourage you to come and check it out. It's beautiful. It turned out really nice. So this was student artwork. They got some guidance from Tracy in the art department, but the students did the work. So it really turned out fantastic. Any questions about my part? Okay, I'm going to pass the baton then to our PLC team, Jenny and Brianne.
Sorry, I had to get the video up. I'm Jenny, I'm the counselor at Woodrow, and this is Brianne, and she's one of our social studies teachers. We're here today to talk to you about our PLC that we're a part of. At Woodrow, PLCs are broken into, or our staff is broken into 2 PLCs. One of them focuses on behavior, climate, and culture, and we focus on the post-secondary education and training ready.
So our goals with our PLC post-secondary is that students will be able to access resources related to their future goals and plans, and that they'll be able to build the skills necessary to gain future employment. So what are they going to do after they leave Woodrow?
Kind of a recap of last year, we organized 17 sessions to help students with future planning. They involved many things from bringing businesses in, schools in, military in, where they either had presentations or small group talks with them. We also had our college application day where the Bank of North Dakota pays for one application to a North Dakota school, and had several students apply for college on that day. And then we also had Junior Achievement come in, and that was a business community member that came in and taught about 7 classes, talking about different career skills for students to know. We had 255 students attend those sessions. A student could have gone to more than one session also.
Okay, this year, our goals remain the same as they have been in the past, and the way we're going to help our students achieve those is helping them access resources. We're, again, preparing for College Application Day, which is coming up very soon. And then in hopes to encourage more of our students to apply for scholarships, we hope to hold a scholarship writing lab in order to help them answer some of those basic questions that come up on many applications, and just to encourage them. Our students tend to struggle getting those sorts of things filled out. Also helping them explore their interests if they're not sure what's next or what they're maybe good at or what they're interested in, going through that Are You Ready? Andy to help them access and find something they are interested in, or maybe find a little bit of their passion as well. And then also giving them access to that ASVAB testing for military for those who are looking in that direction. And on the flip side, for those who maybe aren't looking at the military or continuing their education once they leave Woodrow, to give them those necessary skills for employment, helping them through filling out a job application process. How do you build your resume? How do you access references? So who should you ask? How much time should you allow for them to write a letter? Those sorts of things. And then interview skills as well, getting some of those softer skills for them so they can be ready to step into that interview and accept employment.
And then we thought that students could tell you best a little bit more about Woodrow. So at the end of last year, we interviewed some students, and they gave us reasons why they came to Woodrow, what they liked about Woodrow, and we'd like to show you that now.
I'm Jesus. I am a senior at Woodrow. What brought me here? It's kind of a complicated story to start with. I was diagnosed with cancer my freshman year. So that was North High, which was my home school. And I came in there already starting in academic stuff and stuff like that. And I started getting behind in school. So I missed out on a bunch of opportunities. And I had to cut some of the curricular activities I was in as well. And there was just always constant revising of my plan to graduate with my counselor at North. And one of the alternatives was Woodrow Wilson.
My name is Brianna. I'm a junior at Woodrow. And I came here because I was having a really tough time at Davies, and I just couldn't get through it. So I decided to come here because this was the only school I figured I could get to. And my grades have improved, that's for sure.
Well, my name's Miranda, and truancy brought me to Woodrow, to be honest.
Deontay, and I came to Woodrow because I stopped going to school my junior year, and I was doing a lot of bad stuff and getting incarcerated just to, feed my daughter and stuff. So I decided to leave the city where I was and go back to the city that my dad brought me to.
Hi, my name is Maya Savage, and I'm a junior that's graduating this year. And what made me come to Woodrow is just to get rid of school out of the way, just an easy way out.
I learn on online classes with the help of teachers if I need it. It's more individual work, so less teacher hands-on, and you're more doing it by yourself. Like, you have to do it by yourself, or you're just not going to finish the class because they're not going to do it for you.
The difference is that the classes are just so much smaller, and the teachers can really focus on what you really need than from like a normal high school, like from South Davies or North, where they're just big classrooms and you can't get the help that you need.
The second I came into Woodrow, I realized that there's many kids who are all different in a way. They all have their own story to how they came into Woodrow, not necessarily anything to do with any juvenile behavior or anything like that. Most of these kids all have one goal, and that's to graduate, and that's what they're hoping to reach for in the end game.
I would want the community to know if you ever get in a challenging situation in school and you feel like you want to quit, come to Woodrow.
A family, like a close-knit group of people that I can actually talk to and joke with. Could never joke with your teachers before.
The best thing at Woodrow are definitely the teachers because they don't give up no matter how much a student is struggling, and honestly, that's the best when learning.
Kind of goes with what I said earlier, but it's just one of the things that I've always wanted, you know. I see education as an opportunity. Not many places get to have access to such things, and, you know, it's just worth to take advantage, you know. I hit a hard bump, and I was able to overcome that, and I'm kind of just grateful, you know. I'm thankful that Woodrow was here to be there, be that building, to just provide that sanctuary for me to complete my schooling.
Because I really want to be a doctor when I grow up, and it's not possible without this diploma.
So I can become a marine biologist and follow my dreams.
I want to graduate high school because you can't get very far in life without a high school diploma.
I want to graduate high school because it's just one part of life, and I'm really looking forward to college and getting a job.
Any questions for us? Got great feedback from it, so I think it'll happen again, yeah.
Rebecca and then David.
It seemed like there was a lack of questions. You know, you kept, all the presenters paused. And, are there any questions? I don't think it was because there was a lack of interest. I think we're all just like deeply interested in this information, and I always look forward to this report because it's all goodness. I recognize Jesus from giving him his diploma and some of the others, and remembering his story of being ill. But I wanted to go back to a slide earlier on that talks about, it has the percentages, breaks down the ethnicity, and then the 2018-19 graduate percentages. And so I just would like you to walk us through that a little bit to give us a better explanation, or maybe it's just me, a better explanation, because I think I understand it. But for example, if we look at, say, the Asian Pacific Islander, 2018-19, 2%, and then graduate, 0%. That's, just help us understand where those students are. I mean, they're all at their own, they're all going about it at their own pace, right? So the way we might be measuring graduation kind of success might be different from our other high schools. Could you just kind of remind us about that a little bit, please?
The age of the graduates, so is this by cohort? When we had 64 graduates, what percentage that was a graduation year cohort? I don't have that data readily available to you. You heard from Maya in the interview saying, I'm a junior. Brianne, I'm a junior. We probably had 4 or 5 juniors, a whole lot of a senior cohort, and then some super seniors and a couple of what we call super duper seniors. And when the students commented we don't give up on them, we're there with them till the age 21 maximum.
Right, yeah, and I wasn't looking for any more details in terms of numbers, but just kind of, again, the general sense of, it's a program that allows the students to work at their own pace and very accommodating as long as they're, committed. And that it doesn't, that having, for example, a 0% in terms of graduation under, say, Asian Pacific Islander isn't a negative. It's probably because those folks are still working their way through. I guess that's what I'm trying to say.
The 2018-19, the whole numbers there, the 57, 11, 24%, that's the makeup of the entire school. So that includes sophomores and juniors, seniors, super seniors. That's everybody. So it's not going to match or parallel with the graduation data. It's not the same group that we're looking.
I don't think people stop to realize how important Woodrow is. Essentially, you're taking 50 to 60 kids every year that would fall through the cracks and would not have gotten a diploma, and you're giving them a real chance at life. It's probably, in my opinion, the best school we have in Fargo, and I really thank all of you that work so hard to make it a success. I had one question. Your sixth semester is 29 days. What is the shortest amount of time that you allow them to complete that, and what is the longest amount of time before they have to start again? Because I was at Community High in West Fargo, and I know that they had limitations.
On the maximum side, we do a 5-day extension to 34 days. If there's extenuating circumstances, the rust is getting shaken off, if you will. A teacher will extend that a bit further. We're not helping a student much, though, for having 40, 45-day completions, because they're only going to earn 4 credits in the year. So typically +5, a 5-day extension. On the how fast side, we allow students to bridge in work. We will check Power School if a student has been in Western Civ, and then they come to Woodrow. Our Woodrow teacher will look through and see which units have been completed with a passing grade, and they will exempt those for the student, later catching up with them on the final. So the student showed mastery. You're going to have to show mastery again on the final. I'm not going to have you redo all of this work that you've done. So I actually don't have an exact number. The shortest in the teens, because the student is bridging in work. In the teens, we just had a 5-day weekend, and at Woodrow we say there's no homework, or it's all homework. We had a young lady in our family room who she probably put in 25, 30 hours this 5-day weekend on English and finished it off in the teens.
Nicely said, Mr. Paulson. I don't think we have the answer for this tonight, but I would be interested to know in the future with the conversion of minimum number of days of instruction versus the legislative change to hours, how that affects block scheduling. I think we don't need to get into that tonight, but I'd be curious to see that. And I also want to note graduation rates in North Dakota. And I think that sometimes we don't always compare apples to apples, because not every kid is going to graduate exactly at the same time as what they started with their kindergartners. And our graduation rates are brighter than sometimes they're reported. They just might not happen to graduate at the same time as what they were intentionally or supposed to do initially. And so I thank you for your work, because you do indeed give these students a bright future. And the customized learning environment is really helping them. So thank you for your work.
Thank you. On behalf of Woodrow team, thank you. Started off saying we had some great stories to tell. And if we're on to the next one, I think I will segue to the EL story. Thank you. All right, so shifting gears to the EL program, why are we doing that? I'm the K-12 EL program administrator, as well as being Woodrow Wilson High School principal. And for me, it's been a wonderful growing experience to work with a Woodrow team who's totally committed, 100% all in for students who are struggling through school, struggling in life, lots of obstacles, and then to join an EL team where there's a whole lot of obstacles for EL students as well, that language barrier, the culture barrier, and it's been a valuable experience to transfer from team to team some of the passion, some of the innovation. So continuing with presentation tonight, EL. Here's a quick picture of Ed Clapp. They do a field trip to the Village Inn. You'll see steep grant at the bottom. Grant funding has slowly dried up from a few different grant sources. And at the district level, the whole EL team is very thankful, appreciative to board and superintendents that we've maintained programming through it. Couple of very subtle changes, but we have sustained through some pretty significant grant reductions. So very, very thankful for that piece. We are a member of WIDA, which is the National Consortium. Wisconsin, Delaware, Arkansas, I believe, are the initials for the original WIDA. They would set the standards and would also set the assessment of those standards in the access test. This particular slide, so as of October of 2019, we have qualifying students, 917 qualified students. The second, or the bullet at the top says qualifying ELP access or access screener score. That is the only way a student qualifies for EL. They're screened or they have an access score indicating that they have a deficit in English language. The breakdown of 917, you'll see 512 elementary, 184 middle, 221 in high school. The overall population at the bottom, and you can see the trend data for percentage of active EL students as part of the FPS enrollment by year. This maintain relative similar percentage-wise. This slide, it's probably best to look at in your packet because the numbers are going to be small. I think the most important piece is that you're looking at 23 Fargo public school sites. There's no zeros anywhere, meaning there are no EL students in that building. A different way of saying that is that 100% of Fargo public schools have EL students within the building. Highlighted numbers at the bottom, trying to make some sense of that. For 2018-19, we served 1,080 students. At any given time, our range for the year was 904 to 935 students. With student mobility, we never got above 935. We never got below 904, but we did serve 1,080 unique students over the course of the year. What does that mean? We screened them, we wrote an ILP for them, we put together a plan for them, we implemented the plan for them, we access tested them until they left us at some point. So numbers by building, trend data through the years. Current and exited EL students by year. We kind of joke, one of the first jokes with the EL team is that our job is to move students out of our program. We exist to exit students. We want to get students out as fast as we can. And having said that, they build some tremendous relationships with the students as they're helping them to exit EL programming. This number would reflect the current students that we have, as well as those who exited EL. So the trend data, looking back to 2014-15, there were 1,390 EL students in Fargo Public Schools. I'm gonna guess there was 900 active EL students and probably about 400 former EL students that had successfully exited. The only way you exit, you must pass the access test to demonstrate language proficiency. There will be a slide on that a little later. And then the asterisk says this was pulled on 10 of 2019. We do predict by the end of the school year with the in and out, we're going to be up around the 1,400 mark again. Anticipating very, very similar numbers. Languages by percentage. And again, this might be easiest to see in your handout. For your reference, I think it's wonderful to see the cultural melting pot that Fargo is with all of the wealth of culture that comes to us. In the red on the bottom right side, for interest of languages, it's approximately 68 languages spoken by the 1414 last year within Fargo Public Schools. And again, that number 1414, about 920 or 30 active EL with the exited EL students as well. This particular slide, a little bit of rehashing of data, would draw your attention to the second bullet, the combined current EL students with exited EL students making up about 12%, 11.9% of the student population in the last school year. So 11.9% of all Fargo Public School students are either EL or former EL students. Of those students, 48% of them were born in the US, 52% were immigrants, and of the 52% that were immigrants, 34% of them are refugees. In terms of when is somebody no longer regarded as a refugee, there's not a very clear answer on that one. Are you not a refugee after 2 years or 4 years? Are you always a refugee? At what point do you lose that title of refugee? But from our data, of the 52% immigrants, 34% being refugees. LSS, Refugee Settlement Organization, you can see the trend data. In 2019, LSS is reporting out for the whole state of North Dakota instead of Fargo only, and that would be the same for 2020. Students entering, I think it's helpful for you to understand that we have I'm going to say it's a beautiful registration process within Fargo Public. We have some really smart tech people in this district office. The online registration Power School packet has a home language survey as part of the digital packet. If a parent indicates the presence of another language, that trips a process for an EL teacher to talk with the parent, to do a screener test, to determine if indeed a student qualifies or not. At the beginning of it all is this home language survey that's built into the registration packet. That is the original flag for a student moving down the EL track. The rest of the flow chart, if you're looking through it and you have questions, please feel free to ask questions or ask me at a later time. And again, how they exit, you must pass the access test to exit EL. Yep, and right now I'm going to pass the mic over partway through here to Lori Nappy. She's the elementary EL course captain and summer school admin dean for EL, and she's going to take you through some slides, starting with this one.
I can't even start my presentation without recognizing a former student, Victoria. We go back to the 90s, and she is a perfect product of our program. Very articulate presentation. I'm so proud of you, my girl. I think I was one of your first teachers in America, right? Yeah. So, visual aid I didn't know I was going to have. So proud of you. Thank you for indulging a teacher's proud heart. The WIDA access test is given yearly. It's usually the 4 to 6 week window, depending on what the state gives us. And we test every single student that is marked EL. That would be that whole 900 and some that David was speaking to you about. WIDA does stand for Wisconsin, Illinois, Delaware, and Alabama. And then there was 4 states who got together and said, we need a common assessment to see if our students are learning language. It started out with 4, and then it went to 38, I think currently, 38 or 39, so it's going to be nationwide soon. So now it stands for World-Class Instructional Design Assessment. We have, this is a guidance from the state who would like to see kind of across the board so that everybody's getting the same type of service. Most students who are a level 1 get more service, and you can see at getting up to a level 4, they would get less service. At the elementary, which I would like to speak to, is we give students, I kind of call it a literacy block because we're working on listening, speaking, reading, writing. We have to be very careful what we take them out of. We can't take them out of whole group math, whole group language. We try to take them out of something which would be called, at the elementary, they have dailies. So once they have their whole group instruction, then they are doing small group stuff and rotating. And so we try to take them out of one of those things, and we call ourselves one of their dailies. Depending on their level, we might be 2 of their dailies, we might be all of their dailies, because dailies is for an hour. Just depends on the level of students to make sure they get what they need. How long does it take to learn English? Well, BICS is social language, and that takes about 1 to 3 years. And to have academic language, to be able to speak as a native speaker, can take 5 to 7. At the elementary, EL services can be a pull-out instruction. That's what I do at Lewis and Clark, and a happy addition to my day has been McKinley in the mornings. We have teachers who support Journeys, which is the mainstream curriculum. They will go into the classroom. They will pre-teach what's coming in for Journeys so that the kids are, they have the knowledge to answer questions in their classrooms. And that is something that is for students who are not brand new to English. That really gives them a confidence boost in their homeroom class. A few years ago, Dr. Gross was very instrumental in helping us get a curriculum for elementary. It works on listening, speaking, reading, and writing, all within one curriculum. We also use some of those curriculum-based measurements for our ELOs.
All right, for middle school, we have the sheltered EL classes. As you see, language arts, reading, math, social studies, and resource. New for the current school year is a pilot, if you will. Middle school principals, Dr. Gross, me meeting along with EL teachers, and we're offering social studies sheltered instruction at both Carl Ben and at Discovery. And in teaching with Mr. McLagan, he says he has some very positive comments for the first quarter of social studies sheltered EL in middle school. More collaboration with the site literacy team. I think to understand that part is, as a student is attaining certain levels, is it better to pull them out of social studies or science to get EL? Or is it more appropriate for them to continue in mainstream science and then let's give them a resource room? Is there a literacy, what's the literacy team for the building, and how can we work together to support this student slowly leaving the sheltered EL instruction setup? And would also highlight that these EL teams of teachers, they're promoting cultural awareness and diversity celebration within their buildings. They take that very personally. Middle school tools, you see Reach again, little Duolingo, System 44, Read 180. High school EL services, sheltered instruction in all classes. High school is for credit. The students need to obtain 24 credits to graduate, and we are providing sheltered instruction in English, which would mean it's all EL students in a pull-out English taught by a highly qualified English language arts instructor who is also EL certified. Same for the other content areas of math, social science, and resource. Again, the collaboration, should the student take an EL econ or should they take mainstream econ? Trying to set the optimum course of trajectory for each student. Before I introduce a student who's going to do, she's going to talk about this next class, one quick celebration shout out from our previous slide. If you'll notice, exiting and access, looking at the top, something major happened in 2017 with a recalibration with the WIDA exam. and really is done with best intention, good intentions, and that is that exited EL students across the nation weren't doing so hot in the mainstream. So the federal level said, we're gonna go up a notch. Getting out of EL is not here, getting out of EL is right here, so the whole assessment was recalibrated. It also went to being an online instead of paper pencil, and there was a lot of changes with it. So if you look at the numbers across the bottom, 2015-16, that 94 students exiting on the previous lower bar paper pencil, that was a very typical number, a little over 10%, 12%. Welcome to 2016-17, shock and awe amongst the EL teachers of, whoa, we have a new bar to aim for. And then as you look at the numbers through the year, 16-17 being year one, some teamwork, collaboration, okay, 17-18, what are our deficit language domains? Speaking, ironically, has been one we put a lot of time in. And then we got to 2018-19, we up to 35. And I think the team optimistic this next year that we should probably be at least up to 50 or so, if not even stronger. So just a very positive kudos shout out to the EL teachers for saying, you have a new bar for us, we'll bring students to this new bar. And like I said, I predict we'll be in the 50s or even higher next year. All right, the next student I introduce is gonna talk with you about a class, and when I say the student is part of the EL program, I don't know if she speaks another, actually she's in Spanish 4, I just met her tonight. Alyssa Hansen is going to come up and talk about EL at South. She's a senior. And I'll leave a little bit of mystery to a Spanish 4 speaking student coming in to talk about EL programming. The name of the class is called Partnership with New Americans.
Hi, my name is Alyssa Henning, and I'm a senior at South High School, and I am in the class Partnership with New Americans. And so I'm here for Chloe because she was supposed to be here, but she couldn't. And so every year they take a mentor and a mentee, you're a partner, and you go to Ed Clap and you teach them about the mentee's culture. And it's a presentation and then an activity. And this is a picture of one of the activities they did. And this year for homecoming, we have a pep fest every year. And in our class this year, we got together, like we all did face painting, and we talked about what Pep Fest is and what homecoming is. And every mentor picks something they're really passionate about, and they teach all of the class about it. And Chloe chose yoga, and so this is us doing yoga. And the first day of school, we did a relay race to work on team building and stuff, and to just get to know each other without any pressure. And that's me, actually. And then me and my partner, Sandia, we did a presentation of herself and where she was from to work on different technology stuff. So this was her first time using Google Slides. So I taught her how to use it. And then she presented, and I was just up there for moral support, and she did the whole thing by herself. And this is another one of our mentors, and this is Kiana, and she did her theater presentation thing, and we did a bunch of theater games. And every Friday, we do a game day to learn about, because a lot of people here, they play board games with their families and stuff. And so this is a picture of them playing headbands. This is a game, it's another About Me game. And so every time, every square has a different question that you have to answer. And this one is, they learned about NASA, and they built a little rover thing, and you pushed it down, and there was an egg inside of it. And they wanted to see who could make it so the egg didn't break. This is them learning about welding last year. They were just doing a little presentation about all of the different classes that you can take at South. And this is another picture of the presentation at Ed Clap, and this is the actual presentation part. Okay, I'm done now. Do you have any questions?
I do have a quick question. So major in school for next year for you were talking about?
I want to be an elementary school teacher or a Spanish teacher.
Thank you. And again, the name of the class is called Partnership with New Americans. Traditional English-speaking student being paired with a lower level EL student, lower proficiency level. Summer programs, Lori's gonna do a few comments on that.
I'm part of the summer school admin team. We had an extended program that it came to us from the teachers actually, and they said we'd been doing this during our time and we'd like to do something later in the summer and see how it works there. And so we've got some information on that too. Here you see some summer school. It's 60 hours, 3 weeks in the mornings. And then on the right is a picture from family camp, which we had 6 days from 8:30 to 11:30, and it was at Agassiz, so you had to attend with mom and dad or some relative, older relative. And so we started out with morning meeting with the adults in the adult ALC classrooms, the adult EL classrooms, and then we moved up and we had some student time. Then we got back together with parents for a snack lab where if we read the Very Hungry Caterpillar, we made caterpillars out of grapes, and then they turn into popcorn butterflies. And then more class time, and at the very end was 30 minutes of an activity. And if you saw some of the dads get into the obstacle course that we made out of pool noodles, you would know that this was a great program. And with our, I think I did one too many taps. There, let's see. Okay. I don't know how that got there, but the pictures is covering up the data. And we had students through this pilot program that was brought to us from the teachers. They actually increased from 2 to 4 reading levels, and the reading levels go from A to Z. So if you think of going for 2 whole letters, if you went from a J to a K, L, M, that is a very good, very positive increase. Any questions for me at all? Thank you.
The pilot program is a 6-week program, so they doubled the length and a bit more strategic than traditional summer school was the Jefferson pilot program. The state does allow for allows for 6 weeks, if you will, of summer school, and we took advantage of it. Another example of superintendents hearing a proposal, saying, all right, well, let's go for it. This should be good for students, and let's see what comes of it. And the team of teachers rocked it. Last slide I have here, the animations aren't working, so you're seeing 2 bits of information together. Just wanted to articulate that Jennifer Free and the Adult Learning Center serving the pre-K and then the adults. We collaborate with them, and we have 2 common shared goals with family literacy and helping to develop strong, dynamic EL families. So from the board awareness that, all right, so the 2 EL programs that we support are working on a family literacy and strong family goal. And the second part of the slide, Voyance, is a new program that we are rolling out this year. Dial-in interpreter service, if you will. If right now we had to make a call for Swahili, French, I think they have 270 languages, within a minute we would have an interpreter on the phone who would be helping us to communicate with a non-English speaker. This is being pushed out building-wide. It's not just the EL teachers, it would be entire buildings, the office, the admin assistants, the teachers. Each building has encouraged their teachers to use this tool as much to enable communication to the same level as an English speaker. So if they have a student who's really been kind of struggling and rocked it and they want to pick up the phone and say, hey, just to let you know, Timmy did a great job, the Voyance detour of 2 minutes to get an online interpreter, or not online, but over the phone interpreter, pushing it out throughout the entire district, and it is being extensively used. Great tool. And one last picture here, again from the Ed Clapp. Partnership for New Americans with New Americans is at both Davies and South. Leah Jolke at South and Amy Burdick at Davies. Thanks for doing a lot of sitting and listening to EL program as well. Any questions that you would have?
Thank you very much. When you talk about it taking 5 to 7 years to become academically proficient at speaking English, if we have somebody coming into the program then in middle school or high school, they would not be proficient before they would typically graduate. Do we have some kind of wraparound services? Are they able to stay with the district if they run into those issues of not being able to graduate as a typical student would?
The EL student would have the same access to public education until age 21. The goal, though, at the high school level is to graduate with their cohort within the 4 years is national recommended practice. That is the goal. And what you're hinting at as well, if we waited a year or two, they came as a sophomore and they speak no English, they probably are going to be a super senior because they're not going to attain those credits. The safety check, I guess, being they do have to obtain 24 credits to get that high school diploma, but trying to keep them in their graduation cohort.
I remember from many years ago, Mr. Burkhardt, that our ELL students are almost like in an LRE, least restrictive environment. They cannot be removed, separated either, which we wouldn't want to do. But is that still true? Because we're weaning them back into the mainstream classroom as much as possible. If that's the goal?
The goal would be to give them the most rigorous learning environment that where they would be successful. Finding that sweet spot of I can do this in frustration. It might be in a sheltered class, or it might be in a mainstream class with outside supports. As far as who makes that decision, similar to special education that you're referencing, the ILP team, the language team would make that decision about what would be the best trajectory, or modifying it on the fly.
Yeah. First off, I think I want to just give kudos to Mr. Berkman and our entire EL team. We have a phenomenal EL program with some really dedicated staff. For some of our learners, in fact, our program has been recognized statewide as well, to the point where some of our EL services are being utilized to provide EL services for smaller and more rural districts across the state. And I was just wondering if you can give the board members a little brief summary about some of the programming we're doing there.
If you're familiar with a product called Zoom, face-to-face, this meeting could be Zoomed anywhere, and maybe if you're not able to attend a board meeting, you might Zoom in. Through a partnership with Department of Public Instruction, they grant funded the start of a program to Zoom EL classes across North Dakota from Fargo classrooms, Davies or South. Multiple meetings with those EL teams, with the state, with the superintendents. We currently are Zooming to 4 students. You might wonder, current status. 4 students in Watford City and 1 student in Wahpeton. Other students exploring the idea. And the reason the state level support for it is very high is because North Dakota is becoming more diversified, and many smaller districts are getting their first EL students. In grades K through 8, there's some simpler solutions for providing service, but that high school diploma with those credits that are necessary for graduation, a teacher needing to be both ELA and EL certified, both science certified as well as EL, creates a very difficult situation for them. We have 1 junior who doesn't speak English, and we have no certified EL teachers. So that we anticipate that program to grow, and you will be hearing more about it.
Go ahead, Brandy.
Thank you again for the presentation. I'm looking forward to visiting tomorrow.
We got our work out of you tonight, didn't we?
Get it in one night. And again, thank you to board and superintendent and cabinet. Both programs, just know that they're supported, and it does make a difference when you have staff working, rolling up their sleeves, giving it their 100% to know that supported at the board and superintendent level. So thank you for that.
Thank you. All right. Thank you to all of your partners as well. Thanks for sharing everything. Very inspirational evening in itself. Before we move on to item 4D, I just want to ask the group, do you feel the need for a break before the next report? Sure. Okay, we will take a 5-minute break. to item 4D, which is our ACT data.
Back up, move to item 6E.
Wrong section. So, on to 4D. Who would like to make introductions? Go ahead, Dr. Gross.
Thank you very much. In the past, when we have shared academic information or some of the results around Strategic Initiative 1, we've done that with multiple pieces of data all together. We have decided, with the board's approval, to meter that out so that we can just talk about one piece of data at a time. And tonight, what we'd like to do is share some of the ACT data with you. So we're referencing tonight Strategic Initiative 1, which is Student Achievement and Growth. And in particular, we're looking at what's in the strategic plan, as it talks about as a result of our efforts, students will meet or exceed individual learning goals towards the achievement of district standards and benchmarks for academic proficiency in all content areas. And from there, under that section of our strategic plan, one of the 4 goals, and the 4th one is assessment. We're looking at how we will use assessment data really to drive what happens in the classroom, both at a formative level, those quick, short assessments that teachers use to drive instruction, to more of the summative pieces, like I'm going to talk a little bit about tonight around ACT, but how they create really a balanced assessment plan for our students that help our staff and our group of educators to really make a difference in the lives of kids. So as we look at that, the one piece we're looking at tonight is our grade 11 American College Testing Benchmark Scores, or ACT. And in the strategic plan, the piece it talks about, it says the percentage of students meeting those ACT benchmark scores for English, algebra, social studies, and biology will increase annually. So that's some of the data I'd like to share with you. Before I do that, just a quick reminder that the benchmark scores really are developed by ACT, and what they are is they are a predictability score. So if a student scores at a certain level or higher on one of the subtests, they are 50% chance of attaining a B in a college-bearing class that's similar to that first year of college, or 75% chance of getting a C or higher in that same course. So that's where that score, that benchmark score, comes from. So as we look at that, what are those scores? In the middle column there looks at English, math, reading, and science. The column to its right would be those benchmark scores. So 18 for English, 22 for math, 22 for reading, and 23 for science. So that's the scores that we are looking for, that then if a student scores that or above, has a very good chance of being successful when they go off to college. As we look at the data tonight, we need to, I'd just like to draw your attention that this is the 11th grade assessment that we're looking at. Many students will take the ACT assessment as a senior as well, and some may even take it more than 2 or 3 times to try to better their score, because this is used for admission into colleges and universities. It's also used for scholarship work. In North Dakota, we give this assessment to all of our 11th grade students. So when we're looking at these cut scores, and a student takes the assessment as an 11th grader, they still have the opportunity for 1 more year of instruction in mathematics and 1 more year of instruction in science and so on. So this is where they're at this point in time in their 11th grade year. To give some context to the data that we'll be looking at tonight, just wanted to give an example or show how Fargo Public Schools district data looked in comparison with the state. So on the screen in front of you, the blue bars would be the state mean score in those subtests, and the whole or composite score. The green bars then would be the Fargo Public Schools. This is the 18-19 data. This assessment is given in March. So you can see as we compare the Fargo Public Schools with the state, we fare very well. And our students do very well on this assessment as we make that comparison. Another piece of data would be just to kind of give a history of what the scores look like. And this is the history when it comes to the state, which Fargo data is in there, but so are all the other students who take this assessment as 11th graders across the state of North Dakota. The orange bars are the 17-18 data. The blue then would be the 18-19 data. And you can see across the state the trend between those 2 years. You compare that to Fargo with those same 2 years. And again, this is our 11th grade students. You can see that between the 17-18 school year and the 18-19 school year, the mean score in those different subtests was larger in 18-19 than it was in 17-18. The students in Fargo Public Schools are doing very well. Now, this is not the same group of students. This is 11th grade students in 17-18 and then 11th grade students in 18-19. So it's not a cohort, it's just a snapshot in time for that grade band. So now I want to bring us back, after trying to provide some of that context, to what's in the strategic plan. And we want to look at the percentage of students who meet those benchmark scores in those 4 subtests. So as we pull that data out, what this is we look at the percentage of students in 17-18, that's the red or orange bars, and the percentage of students in 18-19, the green bars, who are at those scores or cut scores as 11th graders. Again, as I kind of led us into this conversation, students still have 1 more year of instruction in most of these subject areas to improve that and to get closer to those cut scores. And many students will take this assessment again on their own as they try to improve upon that score. But you can see where we're at when it comes to the percentage of students in their junior year who have met that cut score. So according to our strategic plan, we would have met that indicator in 1 of those 4 subtests. Because if I go back, you'll see it's in the area of reading that we did see an increase in the percentage of students who met that cut score. As we look at what we're doing around standards-based education, as we look at what we're doing with our different courses at both the elementary, middle, and high school, really defining what our essential learning outcomes are, the idea is, what do we need to make sure that is in all of those classes as we prepare students for high school and this assessment are in place? So as we've talked in the past about our scorecard towards standards-based instruction, as we talk about what those most important learning targets are, it's the work of our staff who are looking at those, who are bedding them into their class and coursework, and over time will then be using those formative, those quick assessments to get some more feedback, to drive the instruction in their classroom that then will impact the scores that are on the screen. So as we continue to share this year after year, we will see the benefit of that work. One other piece I just thought it might be interesting to look at, and this is not in the strategic plan, it's just an additional result, is one thing that we do internally, at least in teaching and learning, is we try to look at those benchmark scores remaining where they're at or increasing each year. So how are we doing when it comes to the curricula that we are providing to our students? And are we seeing an increase, again, not with the same students, but at that grade band, which brings you back to the data I showed you before as we look at the students in 17-18, grade 11, compared to the grade 11 in 18-19. And we do see that that mean score is increasing in all of those different areas. Again, this is not part of the strategic plan, but internally, we would say that we have met 5 of those 5 goals of increasing that or at least remaining stable as we continue through that process. So that's the data that we have around ACT. the data that ties directly to the strategic plan, but also some other data that gives you context about how our students are performing in comparison to other students across the state of North Dakota.
Bob, I think it was maybe your second graphic slide that actually just looked at North Dakota year after year, and it appeared that last year's 11th graders underperformed in all categories compared to the previous year on average in North Dakota. Any sense of what would cause that?
I think that's what each and every district is asking those questions. It's what each and every district is looking at to say, what do we need to do in making sure that we are preparing students for those appropriate classes? Much of this is, again, the idea that a student reaches that cut score by the time they exit us. It all depends on what courses or classes that student may have had up to that point. We all know that a student is going to have English 4 after this assessment is given. Some students may not have had Algebra 2, like we heard from our Woodrow Wilson presentation, that is a goal to get everyone to that Algebra 2, because that is a very large predictor on how students will perform on this assessment as well. So it really would be based on each individual district having those conversations. What I know is internally, what we are talking about is, let's make sure that those essential learning outcomes are articulated along the way, so we make sure that we are preparing our students to be as successful as they can be.
Kind of a follow-up to it. Do you know, was the test altered at all during that 2-year time frame?
There are always new questions that are first tested, field tested, and then added to the assessment so that there are changes over time. I couldn't say that there was a large overhaul of that assessment, but I would say that there were probably new questions that were added and some old that were taken out.
When I look at, so this is the North Dakota one still, right?
This is North Dakota.
Is, looking at the science results, is a 0.1% drop statistically meaningful?
I would say if we were going to look at the standard of error on this or anything else, certainly that would fall within that plus or minus range. So it would be hard for us to pull something out of that and say that we're not performing the way we should as a state. The same way, it all depends upon the number of students who are taking that assessment. Again, this is not comparing the same student one year to the next. It's a totally new set of students in grade 11, and their prerequisite classes may be different.
So that leads me to a great follow-up. Looking at the Fargo scores year after year, was the population size similar, the demographics roughly similar between those two different populations year over year?
Typically, we have around 750 to 790 students who take this assessment during their 11th grade year. And our population or demographics is fairly similar year after year in the Fargo Public Schools.
Okay, thank you.
My question was around the cut scores and the benchmarks that are set. Are they benchmark scores based on 11th grade? Or are they the expectations set for graduation?
The cut scores that are on the screen right there, the 18, 22, and 23, are developed by ACT, and it's through a national norming process, really designed to say, what would that score be that a student has a 50% chance or so of getting that B, or 75% chance or so to get that C in that first year of college? It's when they get to that point would then be the right spot for them. So some students who may accelerate through mathematics because they took advantage maybe of our gifted and talented math in the Fargo Public Schools may have had the prerequisite courses to have all the knowledge needed to get to that score, where others who may not have finished Algebra 2 by the time they've taken this assessment did not have all the learning opportunities that others may have. So really, it's designed to predict how they're going to do in college, and that's why many students will retake the test after they've had that next year of English, or retake the test after they've had that next mathematics course. So it's really just to predict how they may do in college.
So I want to, do you have something too, David? Okay, I would say for having recent grads, when this became state law that every student was required to take ACT or work keys based upon the state scholarship of achieving a 24-point cut score, then the state then paid for everybody to take the test the first time. So, and correct me if I'm wrong, this, when you take it a second and third time, students pay for that on their own. And so that's a little concerning to me, but that's kind of out of our control right now. But you can see where there might be some disparities in socioeconomics there. You know, if my kids took it a couple times, and a lot of kids that maybe have the means to take it a second and third time kind of use this as a practice test. And that's reality. I know that's not what it's intended for. Did you, David, or? Okay.
Dr. Gross, we require all students to take it, don't we?
Yes, this is our state assessment.
And the state does too? It's required of all?
It's required for the student to take ACT or the work keys. We are one of the districts in the state of North Dakota who have determined that this will be our state assessment. So our students do not take the state assessment that matches what an elementary or middle school student will do. So even students who would have chosen the work keys will take ACT in the Fargo Public Schools.
Are there any exclusions?
And a student's IEP could exclude them from that process.
So why 11th grade? If they're all required to take it, is the state also mandating by when, or did we decide, or by we, I mean, did the district decide 11th grade, and what would be the reason for that?
This assessment has always been that year. The idea is that some students will then get their score and actually be able to determine coursework for next year, so that they have one more year, one more opportunity to fill in some of the gaps that they might have. It also allows us to provide some opportunities actually for remediation or test preparation for students. So like President Nelson had mentioned, many students will use this as a pre-test so that they know what they need to do to hopefully be more successful the next time they take it.
So as we look at studying kind of the trend data across the state moving forward, I know that starting this year, the state's going to allow schools or districts, some districts, the option to take the test online. And one thing that Mr. Berkman shared earlier is that when WIDA went online, it changed scores. So would that be something that we would also have to monitor next year to see if the percent of students taking the test online also shifts the potential of the scores, because it's a new modality for how the test is administered?
Absolutely. One thing that is out there right now is the opportunity for some districts to be part of a study with the idea of an online version of ACT. I am in communication with our high school principals, and at this time, the idea would be that we would not be part of that study, that we might allow other districts to do so, because again, not knowing what that will look like, the atmosphere in which a student would need to be exposed to, we want to make sure that our students are set up for success, and then want to look at the research behind how other districts and how other students have performed.
One more question from me. When our measure is looking at this in the aggregate, if we were to look at this with different cohorts of ethnicity or socioeconomic status, would we perhaps tease out different results and maybe see some larger movements one way or another?
Absolutely. I think anytime we give any of our assessments, if that's the state assessment or even our reading benchmark assessments at the elementary, we want to break it down into the different subgroups to see if there are areas that we need to make some improvements in. We are always in a cycle of continuous improvement as a district, and so are our buildings. So that is something that we do and will continue to do.
Okay, Jennifer?
One quick follow-up to that, is that then available on the dashboard, those subgroup, the breakout?
Yes, so
Okay.
on the Fargo Public Schools strategic plan dashboard, if anyone in the community would like to look at our achievement scores, there is a tab for achievement, and then second from the bottom is all around ACT. There are 3 different looks at the data. You can see the trend data. This actually adds a few more years to what I shared with you. An individual can turn off individual buildings if that's what they would like. So they could look just at the district data for that piece or the trends. The benchmark assessment breaks it into those 4 categories like I did as well, and gives a few more years of the history. And just like the other set of data, an individual can turn on or off certain buildings so that you can just drill into the district or a particular building. And then lastly, the last view that we have online is the ACT counts, and this is a very busy set of data. But what this will do is if we turn off all the past years and I just have our last year's assessment on there, what this does is it provides a view on the number of students and their composite score, so you can see the spread of students from not their names, but numbers from, in this case, got a score of 11 to those who actually got a 36. And as we look at this, it's scored from 0 to 36. So it's pretty telling to say we had some students in the Fargo Public Schools who did the best they possibly could on that assessment.
At 11th grade.
Yes.
So one last question before we wrap this up. On the heels of the Woodrow Wilson report, our Woodrow students also are taking this in the 11th grade with their paced learning?
Yes, it is because it is our state assessment. Students are required to take it during that window of time.
Not really a question, just a comment that I think it's also important to note that you take these kids take these tests, but hard work, attitude, and all those things beyond taking that test go far as well. Just because you score a 20, versus a 36, I think that's, sometimes we get caught up into the numbers too much, and hard work and attitude go a long ways.
And your true goals after high school, you want to score really well if you want scholarship money in 4 years. So.
One more comment, and it's good. Remember the days when they used to compare these two classes, and then we got judged as a school if we were proficient or not proficient. So I'm glad that we've moved beyond that.
Good comments. Thank you. Thank you. On to item 4E, Superintendent Report. Dr. Gandhi.
Sure. I have a couple of updates I just kind of want to share with the board. First off is that I know when the long-range facilities plan was approved this year, one of the projects that we looked at was potentially providing services for students that would, on their IEP, say that they would need a setting D environment, and we're looking at a potential remodel or renovations in addition to the school to provide that service. Well, as we are conducting a feasibility study on the potential of that option and we get ready to bring a proposal to the board, we are holding various stakeholder meetings as well. A lot of them are next week. So we are going to meet with teachers at Lewis and Clark Elementary School next Monday. But one thing I did want to share is that on October 29th, we are doing a joint meeting for our family education enhancement team with West Fargo Public Schools, and the agenda item is around what does an environment look like? What do our students need that we can provide some services for some of our students? And it's going to be really an opportunity for any parents to provide input on what they think are some services for our parents, for students, both on the facility side, but then also on the programming side and what that looks like. So that's an opportunity that'll be held at the Lydell Education Center. And then we're going to continue with various stakeholder meetings until we're able to bring something to planning that's really inclusive of different stakeholders that have expressed both either concerns or fears or things around a Setting D program, which we're really trying to do a school within a school philosophy, and really just really identify the set of services that our students need. So wanted to share that. Next week, there's going to be 3 opportunities. One for teachers at Lewis and Clark on Monday. That meeting's been set up through the principal. One is going to be the fee meeting for parents, specifically parents that work within our special education department. We have monthly feet meetings, and then we're also going to be meeting with different community partners next Wednesday around the district. And then November 4th, parents at Lewis and Clark will have an opportunity to provide feedback at their PTA meeting as well. So that's one of the things that I wanted to share in my update. Secondly, just wanted to share that just this week we received our annual update from RSP as well, looking at our enrollment trends and where we are as a district, and we do continue to grow on the south side, as we know about Discovery and Davies. So we are planning on diving deeper into both our RSP report at our December planning meeting, and then bringing a full report to the Board of Education as well. We have been working with the city as in our long-range facilities plan to talk about what does infrastructure timelines look like on the south side of town. I think as of right now, we've been notified that the land that we own south of 76 it wouldn't be wise, or it would be very costly to build on that land until a diversion's been figured out. So really, there would take a lot of work that would be there. So we're going to invite the city to a planning meeting in December to talk about what's flood protected and where there's going to be infrastructure as well. So we'll talk about some opportunities there. And then lastly, I really just wanted to talk a little bit about yesterday, and I'm going to allow teaching and learning to kind of take over this piece as well. Yesterday was our calendar committee had decided to build in a no school professional development day. It was really a truly remarkable experience for our teachers with the amount of professional development opportunities that we offered in the district, both from local presenters, our own teachers presenting, to presenters statewide and nationwide as well that we brought in. We've got a lot of good feedback, but really want to show just how much our teachers are working around the clock and working on their own professional development as well. So I'm going to allow Dr. Gross and Ms. Eisens to present a little bit about that, about what happened yesterday when students were not in school.
Well, thank you very much for giving us the opportunity to share. First of all, I'd like to thank our curriculum teacher leaders and our PLC leaders, and Jodelle Teichen, who is our Director of Standards-Based Instruction, for organizing this day. It was a marvelous opportunity for our staff to learn and grow and come together. On the screen is just a list of all of the different sessions that took place on Monday. And you can see the number of opportunities that were there. Now, this varies from a set of national speakers that were brought in, so I can just zoom in on that set of national speakers. Everything from people from Adlai Stevenson High School to Marzano Research to Solution Tree, providing great opportunities for our staff to learn from evidence-based learning or standards-based learning to self-care. So these were some of the national opportunities that were available. It was like going to a national conference here in Fargo. Then if we look at just some of the other strands that were available, for example, the Course Alike group, there was multiple opportunities built into the day for teachers to come together who have those like curriculum preps. So if it was 3rd grade reading or 8th grade science or AP biology, multiple opportunities for them to come together to continue that work around standards-based education and our curriculum scorecard.
I think I'd like to give a shout out to the teachers that presented. I guess we could not host an event like this without our teachers sharing their knowledge. So some people in great leadership roles were able to lead these grade level teams, answer questions. Sometimes there was more questions than answers, taking notes, but I was really happy to sit in on some sessions and hear the discussion as we were trying to kind of navigate how we're going to reach our goals and use the ELOs as we go forward.
So I don't want to take too much time because we've also asked that potentially down the road on another agenda, we could ask Joe Del Teichen and some of the team to come and share some of the exit tickets or the results of how people's perceptions were around this. But we just wanted to share with you what happened on Monday and the tremendous number of opportunities that our staff had, both from national, local, and then working with their own peer groups as they continue through this process.
Jennifer?
Thank you. Wow. Is this put on collectively with other districts, or this is just what Fargo Public Schools offers?
Correct.
So do we open it up to other districts to be able to attend, or is it, or that is?
It really is customized to
Okay.
our strategic plan and our needs.
Okay.
And I do think that when we've branched out and it's our own staff presenting on very specific curriculums that we're offering, I think that's the power of the day. Yeah.
So do all, like, how many teachers are we talking about? Do we know how many participated on Monday? All of them? Wow. Thank you.
I think you had said it right when we all went, wow, but there are more classes here than at our national conferences. That's impressive. Thank you. All right, anything else, Dr. Gandhi? Okay, we will move on to the amended consent agenda. I would entertain a motion.
So moved.
Okay.
Second.
Okay. All those in favor of the amended consent agenda, please vote by saying yes.
Yes.
Any opposed, no. All right, we have an approved consent agenda. On to our business items 6A, GP2E, and there's a series of GPs that are coming out of governance, and so to familiarize everybody with the process, every time a monitoring report is completed, they are all forwarded to that committee, and the committee makes some recommendations based upon the feedback by the board. So to start this discussion, either we can take these one at a time or group them together, but I need a motion on the floor to start it. Jim?
I move that we adopt the changes in memo number 50, 51, and 52 regarding GP2E, GP3, and GP3E.
Second.
Okay. Motion's on the floor. Any discussion? Go ahead.
You reorganized my papers here, but I'll start with the first one since we grouped them all together, but really my comments probably pertain or can be transferred to each one of these. So let me start with the first one, under board job description for GP3. In red, is the first two sentences that are crossed out as part of the recommendation. So I'm just wondering if someone from governance that participated in this discussion could explain sort of the rationale behind taking this out, because I don't understand why we wouldn't want in there our responsibility to the citizens and taxpayers.
I nominate John.
I'll talk to this. Sure. I brought this to governance. I don't think this sentence is really necessary in this policy with GP1 and GP2 and GP2E and their introductions to our responsibilities, and that GP3 is clarifying that there is a there's a difference between the board's job and the superintendent's job, and that is the role of this policy. The other policies in our suite make very clear that we are representing our citizens and taxpayers, and I didn't think that this sentence spoke well to all of the complexities covered by those other policies and our job descriptions. David?
But this GP3 is the only one that speaks specifically to board job descriptions. And we were elected by these people to represent them. I I would not want that sentence to be taken out of there. I think it completely changes it changes the meaning of the whole thing when I read it without that.
Jennifer?
I would agree with that, and for that reason, I can't support this modification.
Okay. Any other discussions on this or any other of the?
Well, since they were lumped together, do we need to talk about all three of them before we take a vote?
Well, you could.
Unless we
since
amend the
we-
motion to
Since
do
we've
them
got the motion,
separately?
go ahead, and then we can, if we want to divide
Oh, okay.
the motion later, we certainly can.
Okay. So the next one is GP3E. Help me. Is that the next one? So 2E. Oh, did I go out of order?
I don't think there were any changes to 3.
What were the? Okay, so here's 3. Okay, so we talked about 3 first, sorry about that. So 2E is the liaison. Changes being recommended under annual board liaison assignments, is that correct? Okay, so as I look at this, and there's an awful lot being recommended to delete in terms of, and if I remember when we added that in, it was really about accountability and trying to be more clear around types of things we should be participating in as a liaison to better understand each one of our buildings. And so if we take all of that out, I don't see how, to me, this is a vague, the purpose of an annual school board liaison assignment is to provide structure for FPS members to gain knowledge, but it doesn't define, it doesn't give any suggestion as to how to do that or any way to measure that. So we're just saying that would be great if you did, but how are we holding each member accountable to the ask?
I guess I would say in our monitor reports when we monitor each other. That would be that was the kind of the meaning I got out of the committee, but please correct me if I'm misinterpreting that. Committee, go ahead.
Yeah, no, I agree with that this would be part of our monitoring. If we're aware of any board members not meeting this commitment, we would mark and note that as so. I do think that this still holds us responsible. This is one of our policies. It does say we are going to be assigned 2 to 3 schools to visit. It's our responsibility to perform that and to line that up through the principal. The goal is to learn about our schools and what's happening in those schools at, boots on the ground. What our role is not, and what this clarifies, is going into the schools and evaluating them, whether at a school level or any individuals within that school. That's not our role. And our role is not to bring back ideas for improvement or anything like that. Our role is to get into there and see the schools in operation and learn what's happening out there. And I think the new language makes that more clear, and I am in favor of this change.
Okay, Christy?
John, I think that's an excellent synopsis of what had been discussed and the accountability factor to what we have as board members.
Brian?
And I guess for this year, for me, I'm not on the committee, but I get a weekly update from Discovery every week, which is awesome. Nice video cast, podcast. So I feel very connected, and I'm getting more out of this than just being required to go one in the spring and one in the fall. I can go all the time if I want to. Under the old way, you're limited to just 2 times for a report. So
I also think one other thing that had been brought up is spending a half day in a school can be cumbersome to that school administration. And so if we could make a couple of smaller visits and do it on a different timeline, like you said, you're learning a lot from those weekly updates. It doesn't have to be spending an entire afternoon being cumbersome at times.
And I guess to that point, I guess I would say if you have that request of a principal, maybe that's an individual, this is really to tailor it towards your schedules, not to interrupt education, because that's the last thing that we want to do. But be sensitive to the principal's times and the disruption in the classroom. So I think this adds a little bit more flexibility. It's not quite as prescriptive. I have Rebecca and then David.
I just wanted to make sure, so I'm in favor of the new language. I also wanted to make sure that there was the understanding that with the previous language, it wasn't saying, it was the minimum recommended activities for board members each school year were the items listed in the bulleted. It didn't say, it wasn't that to only go, certain times, but it was just, these are the minimum requirements. But I too, I echo John's comments and I guess Christie's. I was involved with some of the more specific language changed a while back, and I'm fine with our new language.
Yeah, I like this, the changes that have been made here. I felt, I don't know, I think Christy and Robin both said it, I feel like an intruder, like I'm taking up time that they could use some other way, especially in visiting elementary schools, because the principals often will take you into a classroom and boom, the wheels are off the bus right now. And I don't know how long after you leave it takes them to get back on track. I think our job is not to be assessing the teachers or the principal or anything. I like the fact that essentially now we're making our presence known, we're becoming aware of the buildings, and this works for me. The only thing, unless we separate these, I'm going to vote no, because I'm going to vote no on the board job description change. And I find no problem with the others.
Okay, I've got Rebecca and then Jennifer.
I don't know if this has to do with the recommended language change or not, but I don't feel like an intruder when I go in and visit the schools. And I don't know if that's because the people I'm visiting with are doing a good job at making me feel more welcome than what is true. But a lot of times I hear people say they don't feel welcome in the schools, or they feel like an intruder, or we have said that as board members. But I'm welcome to receiving any feedback from the individuals that I spend time with at the school in regard to how they feel about my time there. And whether it's true in my analysis or not, I've been made feel very welcome. And again, it could be that someone's, I don't know if they're putting on their best face, on that day, but I just want individuals to know that I'm so happy to be able to have that time in the schools. And do trust that they will provide us with the guidance as to when it's best for us to come in based on their schedules.
Good. Did you have something to add, Jennifer?
Thank you. So I agree with the point where you said the half a day could be a long period of time, and that might be too prescriptive. But I don't see anywhere in here that would make me feel like I'm there evaluating, or that I should be there evaluating in the previous context. So I think that it even says here that it was for professional development opportunities for board members. So really, I guess my concern is, and I get that we can note it in our reviews and in our homework, but there's nothing in here that gives any guidance to how often. So how are you going to do that? What are you measuring it against? Because it says here, it's up to the board member's personal schedule as the personal schedule permits. So what if my personal schedule does not permit any? Am I out of compliance, or am I in compliance?
It depends on the person that's filling out the monitoring report, and that's their opinion.
Right, but shouldn't it be
to
more?
say a pass-fail, I think, isn't always practical either.
I think it should be more clear, because I also think of it as a board member's duty, right?
Any other comments?
I guess
on
that would be my
one?
suggestion, is that, if we could continue that conversation and I'm not entirely opposed to everything that's redlined, but just, those would be my added suggestions. But I can't obviously vote for it just like this. And then the third is what? GP3E, 3E changes. Okay, number 13, so just 2 words, is that correct? Aware, okay, so school board ethics, number 13. Aware that it is as important for the board to understand and evaluate the educational program of the schools as it is a plan for the business of school operation. So again, I'm a little bit confused as to why we would eliminate evaluate when it's our responsibility to make sure that the vision and we don't decide on the hows, but we decide the what. And so to measure the what, we need to evaluate. That's part of our policies.
Okay, go ahead, John.
I just want to point out while we're talking about 3E that I believe the beginning of this policy that we have in front of us, the board job description and the listing of our responsibilities and functions of the Board of Education are a much better description of what we are doing here than that first sentence of GP3 that I was asking to have removed. Thank you.
Okay, go ahead, David.
I say just one more thing. I think Jennifer brought up a good point on these liaison visits. At least in the first, before the changes, there was some accountability. What if, I don't visit any schools or go to any PTA meetings because I say I can't? My work schedule wouldn't allow it. I don't know. At least our feet are being held to the fire with our current wording to some degree.
Go ahead, Jim.
Well, first of all, David, what if your work schedule, what if we didn't change the policy and your work schedule wouldn't allow it? Because what it says here in all these things that we're focusing in is the minimum recommended activities. From my perspective, doesn't mean needs to be any of the other 8 of you. I contact the building principal and I contact the PTA president and I tell them I am your assigned liaison for the year. Use me how you would like. And I put the ball in their court. I don't think David meant that when we go into a classroom, we're an intruder. When we go into a classroom, we just changed it. That's true of any adult that isn't the teacher that wanders in that the kids don't know. So I'm very cognizant of that same issue. And the idea that you're going to get a principal or a teacher to give you feedback saying, this was really not a good time for you to come, you forget the hat you wear when you walk in that front door. So, again, it doesn't matter what's written here. It's about what do you feel you need to do and make yourself available when it works for you to assist the principal or the PTA president with whatever their issues are that they'd like the school board to be aware of. That's my view of what the liaison role is.
Okay, it looks like we've discussed all 3 of these. We have a motion on the floor for all 3 of these items to be approved.
Do we want to divide the question, or?
I can call on you to do that, yeah.
Okay. I guess I would make a motion that we divide it so we can vote on them individually.
Does that need a second or discussion? Okay,
It needs a second. There is no discussion.
okay,
Second.
okay. Okay, I guess we need a roll call vote on all of those that are in favor of dividing the question.
Knutson,
Yes.
Brian Nelson,
Yes.
Paulson,
Yes.
Rodenbiker,
Yes.
Ulrich,
Yes.
Ani,
Yes.
Benson,
Yes.
Johnson,
Yes.
President Nelson.
Yes. Okay, then we will take these separately, one at a time, and we can take the votes. We'll do them on the order that they were on the agenda. So we have held our discussion, and we will call our first roll call vote on GP2E, and that was the changes to the school liaison policy. We are ready for votes.
Brian Nelson,
Yes.
Paulson,
No.
Rodenbiker,
Yes.
Ulrich,
Yes.
Ani,
Yes.
Benson,
No.
Johnson,
Yes.
Knudsen,
Yes.
President Nelson.
Yes, motion carries. GP3 on memo 51, changes to that. I've got to get mine straight now, Jennifer. Let's see. No, that's okay.
Paulson,
No.
Rodenbiker,
Yes.
Ulrich,
Yes.
Ani,
No.
Benson,
No.
Johnson,
Yes.
Knudsen,
Yes.
Brian Nelson,
Yes.
President Nelson.
Yes, motion carries. On to GP3E. This is related to removing a couple words. Am I pushing it too fast?
Just want to make sure I keep track of everything as well. Thank you.
Okay.
Rodenbiker,
Yes.
Ulrich,
Yes.
Ani,
Yes.
Benson,
No.
Johnson,
Yes.
Knudsen,
Yes.
Brian Nelson,
Yes.
Paulson,
Yes.
President Nelson.
Yes, motion carries. On to the item pulled from the agenda. That would be item, let's see, now it is, well, this happened to me last time. We're going to squeeze it in before the possible executive session. So pulling, Board Member Knudsen pulled GP 6, 8, 11, 12, 13, and 14 for discussion. So we should probably start by having a motion on the floor to accept this report.
I'd like to make a motion that we accept memo 49 that covers GP 6, 8, 11, 12, 13, and 14 as the monitoring document.
Second.
Okay? Motion's on the floor.
I just wanted to formally apologize for not getting my report sent in time to be included here. And I feel terribly about that because I have said more than once about how important it is for us to all complete our homework. And this is homework that is specifically related to our work as board members. And I see that as exceptionally important. So, at any rate, I do have the information that I put together so that you can take a look at that as you wish and incorporate that in President Nelson into our governance as you see fit. But I just wanted to say that I don't take it lightly, and I don't expect it to just be brushed off to the side that some person didn't finish their homework.
Yeah, I think that you mentioned that at the last board meeting, actually. Thank you for your transparency. So in the past, we've had this happen, and I think it's important that we accept the report with those that were sent in on time, just because Anne Marie would have an unending job if that were the case. So is there any other comments or questions about this one? Go ahead, David.
Yeah, and I'd like, well, I'm sure you've already noticed, mine's missing too, because I can't keep track of time, apparently. I thought it said Wednesday, and I sent mine in Wednesday and was informed that I'd missed the deadline. But that was my fault, and I take responsibility for it.
Well, we're all coming clean tonight. Okay. Thank you for your honesty. Go ahead, Rebecca.
Yeah, and I want to make sure, I wasn't expecting that it be added in, to the formal. I understand our process, so I just wanted you to know that I did the work. Thank you.
All right. I think we're ready for another vote, Anne Marie.
Ulrich,
Yes.
Ani,
Yes.
Benson,
Yes.
Johnson,
Yes.
Knutson,
Yes.
Brian Nelson,
Yes.
Paulson,
Yes.
Rodenbiker,
Yes.
President Nelson.
Yes. Motion carries. Okay, on to the original item 6D on the agenda.
President Nelson, I would move that we enter executive session for the purpose of negotiation strategy as permitted under North Dakota Century Code, Section 44-04-19.1.
Second.
Okay. All those in favor of moving into an executive session at this time, please vote by saying yes.
Yes.
Any opposed, no. Okay. We will get things together here and get the room ready. We'll We are back to our regular board meeting, and we are on agenda item 7A, which is a level 4 setting D tour share outs. And I'll kind of turn it over to Christy and David. I don't know who wants to go first or how you'd like to present, but you have the floor.
No, thank you, David. I was going to say age before beauty, but I may be cheated out of both. So thank you, President Nelson. I had the pleasure to go to both Pancalo in Elmo Lake and Carner Blue in Blaine. 11 of us attended that trip, and just a couple of the feelings that I got from it. I do have some photos that I've put together in a slideshow. I didn't get back to my house today to grab my computer, so I will just send those out as a PDF so you can scroll through those photos and take a look at it. But just some of the feelings that I got from it. One of the things is I wish anyone who has questioned a setting D, I would love for them to have an opportunity to go through either one of these facilities. It really increased my awareness of what they're doing and the good that they're doing. So I felt that they're building trust and relationships, a lot of one-on-one. They have neighborhoods, and each neighborhood had 4 classrooms. Classrooms had up to 8 students per classroom, so it was a smaller feeling of caring. And because of the one-on-one, they're providing the services that are needed in one location. Inside of the neighborhood, they would have several small group rooms, and they had a soothing room where if someone wanted to, they were having a tough day, they could go into that themselves. They could choose music that they wanted to listen to. They could adjust the lighting that they wanted to. So they were helping themselves, which was really a neat thing. In the classroom, students are categorized not necessarily by age, but by their learning. And so you may have somebody who is 8 with somebody who's 10, and it just depends on their learning levels. The atmosphere, soothing lights, short hallways. A lot of the hallways had slight curves to them so that your line of sight was shorter, so that it reduces the flight risk when they can't see a long hallway. We talked about the goal of reentry. That really is the goal of these schools, is to get the children back in with their typical peers. And so they talked about, sometimes it's about a 2-year window, up to 3 years to get the students back, but it's helping them develop the skills that are needed to go back and reenter. I feel that it's an opportunity for us as a district. It was great that David and I could both go, and then all the other people that were there, from administration to teachers to counselors, a vast variety of people that attended. It gives us an opportunity to really learn from these 2 schools of what they have done well and what they chose to improve on. And we could even see the difference between Carner Blue and Pancalo, because Pancalo is newer, but they're in the same district. And so to feed off from what they've done well and bring it here so we don't have to reinvent that wheel. So I thought it was a very valuable trip for me, and I will share those photos with some highlights below that so you know what I'm showing.
Well, Missy and I and 9 others went to Red Wing. And Red Wing was a little bit different school. I think it was composed of 6 districts, wasn't it? And I think the total population was around 115 to 140. That went from I don't think there was any pre-K there, but from kindergarten through adults. Some of the interesting features, everybody, when they came, everyone was fed breakfast and everyone was fed lunch, and there was no cost. And the executive director, they have a principal, but we had a tour given to us by the executive director of this school. She said that it's absolutely impossible to teach hungry kids anything, and she said the difference after they ate was remarkable. I agree wholeheartedly with what Christy said about if people could see this school, they'd probably ask for their kids to be brought there, because that's exactly what's happening at this school. They had parents begging to allow their kids to stay after they were ready for reentry, and others who were requesting that their kids be allowed in. During the course of a year, they have about 40% reentry back into their schools. Of those, I asked the question about how many returned, and she said most of them. I think she said they had only about 10% that they never saw again. But it was an amazing place. Small classrooms. Missy jotted this all down. I certainly didn't remember all of this. 650 to 700 square feet. They had a different staffing ratio than we've been talking about. They had one teacher and one para for 8 students. And I think we were thinking we'd need, definitely need more paras than that. It worked very, very well. One of the most interesting things she said was that all of the furniture moves. They're sitting on balls, they're sitting on rocking chairs, they're moving because students have to move every 14 seconds because their spine is growing and they have to readjust their bodies that often. I've never heard that anyplace else. I don't know if it was true or not, but it was interesting.
Makes you sit up straighter.
Yeah, I don't know. Mine, I think I can get by with moving about every 6 days. So I'm done. Restraints, I think Missy asked this question. Whether they use restraints, they do. They had 405 restraints last year. That compares with 360 that we had. So there's nothing unusual there. And one of the things, when you went into the rooms were almost bland. They don't allow any more than 20% of the walls to be covered because it's too disruptive to, they can't concentrate. Walls are virtually bare. And I don't know if she brought it up or if one of us brought it up, school psychologists, of course, are very, very necessary. She said she had a terrible time keeping psychologists simply because of the fact that they had other places they could go, honestly, for more money. So she worked with the local teachers association on an incentive program for their psychologists. Any psychologist returning the second year was given a $5,000 bonus above their salary. If they returned the third year, they got $10,000, and that continued, I think, until they had accrued $35,000 additional. And she said since that's happened, they've kept the same people. They've had no problems whatsoever. But it was really, really eye-opening. I think that they don't call theirs a level D, they call it a setting 4. That's Minnesota's language, which I think sounds much more, I don't know if you want to say innocent, it sounds more, I'd like to have my student going to a setting 4 rather than a level D, I guess is what I'm trying to say. But enjoyed it. The van trip down was pure absolute torture. It felt like we were driving across railroad tracks the whole way, but it was well worth it. And Missy has, I'm sure she'd be willing to share this with you, she jotted down, must be 30 different little stats here. It was very, very good. They have no boys and girls bathrooms. They have bathrooms.
Go ahead. David has jogged my memory on a couple other things. In each of these schools, there were about 120 students, and they were K through 8, and it's 19 different districts in the Minneapolis metro area that are coming together to form this individual district. A lot of natural light. Every room that they had transom lights to get to even to inner offices, so there was a lot of natural light. Goes with that less disturbance. Each of the schools, Carner Blue is a science-based because they're right on the edge of, kids can go out and do nature walks and they do some different things. And Pancala was art-based. And so they had harmony and some of those things as some of their neighborhood names, which was very interesting. And I think when you look at it, the kids, one of the other things I thought that was very interesting is the students are, if there's 8 kids in a classroom or 6 kids in a classroom, and one decides to get up and walk out of his classroom, he can do so. The door locks behind him so he can't re-enter, but he can walk from his classroom into the neighborhood, and it's a safe zone. In those neighborhoods are large pieces of furniture that are all movable, soft, really, they can't do much harm. They can walk on them, they lay on them, they do all different things. And even if they choose to leave the neighborhood, they can go into one of those smaller rooms, or they can walk out of that neighborhood into the hallways, and everything is locked behind them, but they could have their para follow them, but it's not 5 or 6 people embarking around them trying to contain them, which sometimes makes the situation worse for someone who is struggling. So it's a way for them to feel much more safe, and then when they're ready to go back to their classroom, then their para would be able to take them back through those locked doors. But it allowed them, rather than, excuse me, the restraint, that they could, if they were just, not doing well in their classroom, they could walk out of that classroom and hang out in that neighborhood if they chose.
So I was going to ask David, so were there kids there, since you're a retired educator, were you able to witness any of the student interaction?
We had, and Missy, please help me because I know I'm forgetting some important things. There was one, they have the main classroom and then they have this small room that they call a planning room, correct?
Yep.
And the planning room, the child could enter that with or without the para to kind of get themselves back on track. And they did that often. We saw several kids. We saw one where the para they were in discussion. No yelling, no screaming, no running wildly out of control.
They do have neighborhoods, just like you mentioned, and every child has access to a sensory room. I was interested in what the floor was because it was a little softer, and I'm not sure exactly what that was, but I did appreciate their details. And the other piece they have, so they have 4 neighborhoods, but they had 3 mental health therapists and 3 social workers that flex between the 4 neighborhoods for additional support for that wraparound, which I thought was just an interesting model.
What did I miss, Bob?
I have a question too, but you go ahead.
I don't think you missed much. I think other than they had plenty of opportunities for outside agencies to come in and push in. So along with the neighborhoods or those classroom communities, there were multiple small group spaces that were large enough for maybe a social worker and a student, or maybe even a larger group just dependent upon that. So the design of the space was to accommodate that. I think also everything from the lighting to the ventilation system to the wall coverings was all designed purposely for the setting itself. Everything from not having lights like we have in here to maybe more LEDs so that you could control the intensity and the color. The ventilation system probably was designed twice as large as you might in another building so that the sound wasn't as noticeable, because sometimes those are the triggers for students. So I think the architects of those spaces purposely looked at how can the design of the facility meet the needs of the students.
So my question was actually partly in relationship to some of the things that you just shared, but I'll ask, and if you want to add something to it. Christy had mentioned 19 districts participate in the facility in Minneapolis, correct? Along those lines, did they share how that partnership or what that partnership looks like with mental health services, human services within Minnesota? Are those, you mentioned partners coming in and having spaces, but so are they obviously contracted services then when a student needs those wraparound mental health services?
I know at Goodhue, where we were at, they actually had 3 on staff, mental health workers, but they also did partner through community partners through contracts to have them come in for other purposes. So they definitely said they needed their community.
To that point, I think that's a great question, because I know Minnesota has different laws than we do. So that's a conversation that needs to probably continue on the North Dakota side. If you've got some good models there, that would be a legislative issue we could work on. Good question. Yeah. Okay. John and Bob.
On a similar note to that, how does the funding model work with all of these districts coming together? Does one district own the facility and have the taxing authority and then receive tuition? Or is there do they have their own tax authority? I know it's a little bit different model again in Minnesota than North Dakota, how we do these things, but how are they paying for all of this?
The two sites that we visited were part of Northeast 916, Metro 916, which is an independent school district. So that board was a board member from each of those individuals, districts could create that. They had their own taxing authority to build the building. And then there was a tuition structure that was designed when students from District A came and received their education at either Pencala or Karner. So it was kind of a blend of both an independent district and then tuition.
And Goodhue charged $20,000 per student per year.
Dr. Gross, when you say independent district, an independent special education district, correct? And then can you clarify they provide all special education services across the board at all levels to those school districts, or is it just the level 3 and level 4 services?
It was an independent district that provided those services. The two that we saw were the level 4 facilities. The districts themselves, the feeding districts, all had their own special education programming within their systems. So they all had a level 3 and 2 and so on. And as the communication was between those districts, it was how can we best meet the needs of those students, and then how can we transition them back? They did talk about having that many districts meant multiple meetings, but in the end it was what was best for that student. So it wasn't that every special education service was provided by this independent district. It was some of the specialized services that the different districts then accessed through this independent piece.
And there were some with disabilities, different disabilities as well, development disabilities that attended school there.
So with an independent district, what is the structure like at the high level? Is the highest level a principal, or is the highest level, is there a superintendent of that independent district?
I think it is very different in Minnesota because it's run through your, usually out metro, you have metro and then you have outside, but they run it through their, like the service co-ops. And so our service co-ops aren't comparable, Seek to like Lakes Country. So that's, in fact, they have a little more privilege in bonding to build. So there's some legislative laws that allow them to have some flexibility to generate funds to build, and even for funding for those kind of programs, because they realize it's a way to make sure all kids are served. So I do think they are very different models, and I don't know, we don't have the legislative framework to attach that to. I lost my train of thought there, but one thing I thought was interesting at Goodhue, I just wanted to mention, was they also had some rules about if a student went there, how are they gonna stay connected to their home school? And I know that Karner Blue, same thing, but I really respected that and how they networked and asked principals to have X number of visits to the building, how we were gonna connect back with teachers, so that there were some thoughtful things they had on that connection piece.
I'd forgotten that the principals had to come and visit the students that they had there. It wasn't, there's no choice.
I'm sorry.
So with kind of the hopes and dreams and what we're looking at putting together here, I'm just wondering, not with the answers right now, but since legislatively, I mean, we're talking two different states, and so opportunities exist in one area that might not in another, or maybe they do, but in different ways. So we don't have the session, meeting again for a while. And so I just hope that we continue to, keep pushing and thinking about, like Robin, as you mentioned, in regard to potentially the work that GAC might need to do, or ramping up even before the legislative session, so that we don't allow our current system to hamper what we really know that we need to do. And of course, there are no guarantees legislatively what might happen or not, but just to keep that in mind so we don't shortchange.
To that point, I think the timing is great because we are in their interim. And it gives us time to, they can be educated along with your learning process as well, and our learning process. So, Brian and Go ahead,
No, I
Brian.
was just gonna add, the principals that have those students there, I would imagine they're part of the IEP team to help make those decisions. They would want to be there as well.
Just want to thank David and Chrissy for making the time and going, and thank you for sharing your thoughts as well. And, you know, these are two models that we looked at for the set of services that they provide their students. There's also things that happen in Minnesota that we would not want to replicate in our school district. These are standalone buildings, and we're looking at providing these set of services at one of our existing schools, and that is important for us to say as well. And then even legislatively, you know, I think the focus should be more on providing those mental health services into our schools and how can we allow to break down some of those barriers, not necessarily as an independent authority or another taxing entity, because I think we really want to look at this from the perspective of this is just another program in Fargo Public Schools, the same way that we offer a variety of programs at other schools. Here at this school, we offer this one program where we're able to concentrate some resources, and I think that's important for some of our parents and students to know as well, that we're not trying to make it an exclusionary separate thing.
Well, thank you. Yes, thank you for taking the time to go. Sounds like we learned a lot. Okay, committee liaison and correspondence reports. Should we start with Christy and come around this way?
Mine's quick and simple. We had governance.
Okay. Go ahead.
I apologize to everybody, I wasn't here the last board meeting, so I don't have anything, but tomorrow I will be visiting the Adult Learning Center, and my Madison visit is also scheduled.
But you have a tan. Yeah. You look great. Thanks, Brian. Go ahead.
I'll try to be quick here. Lots of good things that I think that we need to be aware of. I attended a concert at Fargo Davies last Monday, which was great. They're always great there. I love the chairs. You can just sit in them and close your eyes and listen. And I also attended a suicide prevention training in my district down in North Dakota, and it was Andy Heitkamp provided the training. He's out of Minot State University. He's through Connect. And a couple of stats that stood out to me. 90% of the population has mental problems. And that the year 2020 has some sort of a mental problem. And the year by 2020, which is 3 months, we're going to need more mental health professionals than regular doctors, is what he said. The last point, President Nelson sent out that thing with the legacy fund. I appreciate that. And so I did a little homework on it. And I keep a lot of statistics and things like that. And I'd be interested to see, we need to keep an eye on the legacy fund, and we got to have some ideas and some solutions for that. You know, when you read the articles in the Forum in April of 19, when they're talking 2025, there's going to be 14.4 billion in that fund if it's not tapped with interest and things, and it's going to be 12.6 billion if they do tap the interest and use it. That's a lot of money. And when you look at the statistics over 10 years for Fargo, back in 08-09, we levied $64 million. In 18-19, we levied $50 million. Okay, we're still under that cap. But I don't have the other numbers that go along with it that's also important with foundation aid. We're going to need to be careful. The legislature will need to be careful of how are we gonna fund schools, you know? And so we all need to observe that and be aware of how they're going to do it. Traditionally, in 9 and 13, when those were two big money pushers to districts, you saw property tax go down, and then property tax keep going up afterwards. And so we just need to be aware of what's going on, and I think there's opportunities out there, but there's challenges is what I've seen, and it all resulted from your article that you sent out and challenging us, so thank you for doing that.
Sure. Just in case you haven't had a chance to look at your emails, it was just the Dickinson Press overview, wanted a discussion on the legacy fund, just an FYI. Go ahead, Rebecca.
I attended governance and last week celebrated Indigenous Peoples Day. We had our communications committee meeting today. We discussed that, well, we looked at GP7, and GP7 lists the purpose and the means for all of our committees. And so we're going to be looking at potentially a completely different committee, potentially, or a new name for the committee, potentially a new purpose. The reason why I say potentially is because I'm looking for, basically at the end of the meeting, we said, we're looking for input from everyone on the communications committee plus every other board member in regard to help on this, to redefine what we need to be doing. And basically, by that, I mean, what is missing? What is a service that the board members, that we're not providing to our community, but also not providing like internally to help the board do its work better. And when I say to the community, I mean if we're doing our work better internally, then therefore we're providing a service to the community. So our next meeting is November 18th at 7:30 in the morning, but before that, Anne Marie, is the date the 13th that you want information, you and Betsy want information back? So anyone on the board that has any ideas in regard to what is it something, kind of like hopes and dreams almost, because we can do really what we want here. Hopes and dreams in terms of what is it that the board ought to be doing that we're not? What kind of service? Does it have to do with linkages in our community linkages, like our outreach in terms of our liaisons? Does it have to do with strategic partnerships? Does it have to do with advocacy work? So just kind of thinking along those avenues. And then also, how might this committee work to help provide kind of internal communications capacity to the board to help the board do its work better? So that's kind of the framework that we, I think, agreed on that we'd like to kind of look towards. And then from that, after we figure out, are we still called the Communications Committee, or might we be recommending a new name? Our goal is then to figure out our purpose, and we'll talk about that at that meeting on the 18th. And then from there, we'll go into our means. So you'll hear more, but I guess we're looking for input from you all. And you can send that information to me, and then I will send it to Anne Marie and Betsy. Does that reflect what we talked about today?
I think so.
Communications Committee? Okay. And just as a side note, my two daughters go to North High, and I want everyone to know that we just finished up a 3-week service with German exchange students, and we hosted one at our family, or with our family, and there were 10 or about 10 students from Germany, a community, Chemnitz, about the same size as Fargo, that spent time here, and it was amazing. And to watch youth and parents too, host parents, go from you're having a stranger arrive, and 3 weeks later, you know, it's a best friend, and you're having the opportunity, of course, to learn more about community and language and all of that. So I never had the opportunity as a child to have an experience regarding foreign exchange students, and it's just, it really, I always wanted it, but it opened my eyes in terms of the importance. And so really just thankful and grateful that we have that kind of a program in our schools. And so thank you for helping us provide that opportunity to our students.
Thank you, Rebecca. Jennifer.
So I attended communications, and thank you, Rebecca, for sharing the detailed information. If I could, I would just share a couple of additional comments around that. Rebecca had said this morning that this is really an opportunity to think outside the box, and I think sometimes the struggle has been like coming up with the ideas. What do we want it to look like? What should we be doing? What does good look like? What does great look like? How can we help in those areas she mentioned? And so part of the discussion included, what do other districts do? Are there other best practices? We don't need to, again, reinvent a wheel that might already be running very effectively and efficiently and excellent. And so I believe that Anne Marie was going to send out an example, so look for it on your email. And that's just a start. But I mean, I find a lot of information just saying, type in a district, or type in, across North Dakota or even Minnesota, and look at their structures of their committees. This might be our opportunity to really, change it up and improve it. So I was kind of excited about that opportunity, but sometimes it can be like, where do I start? Who do I ask? Google, right? What did we do before Google? And so that's really what I wanted to add to that report. So thank you, Rebecca. And then also I had my second liaison visit this morning, or actually this afternoon, over at Lewis and Clark. And so that was great. I spent some time with the principal over there and just got acquainted a little bit and heard a little bit about what makes Lewis and Clark unique and some of the things that they're proud of. So it's always a great opportunity. I always enjoy that. And he talked about Envoy. We spent a good amount of time talking about Envoy. I do have a question about that. The liaison reports that we used to fill out are no longer in the policy. Is that correct? That was one of the red line, so I'm not to fill those out. Is that correct?
I believe so, yes.
Okay. So then that's all I have. Thank you.
Thank you, Jennifer. David.
No report.
Thank you, David. My personal report, I was at Governance Committee last week, Communications Committee today. An update on the status of the negotiations and the mediation. We have named our advisor. The association named their advisor. I believe they've met at least a few times working to find a third advisor. That needs to be identified by this Thursday. If not, then we'll be reaching out to the senior justice of the Cass County District Court to name a third. There's not a timeline on that, so that I don't know if that's ever been exercised, so that'll be a new experience. I do know, though, that those two advisors are working very hard. They've identified some good candidates and are really hoping to get that person identified to us by Thursday. Assuming they do, then they have 15 days to issue their written recommendation to the association and the board. How they do that is not specified in our negotiated agreement. It's really up to the three of them to decide what's going to happen and how they're going to do that. I would imagine that it's the third person they choose that is considered the chair of that, so I would expect that that person would be laying the ground rules for how they're going to be doing that. And as I know more about that process, I'll keep you all up to date with that. Hoping for good recommendations then by November 8th. And then Thursday, Friday this week, going to North Dakota State Board Association Conference. Very much looking forward to that and the professional development that comes along with it. And then have my school visits finally arranged for next week. It's been a very busy fall for me, and so I'm a little sad it's taken this long, but very much looking forward to getting out to those schools. So that's my report. I believe Robin's president's report has been handed out. Yes,
I'd like to add something to the president's report. November 15th will be our planning meeting. It's been moved from November 1st to the 15th, and it's 7:30 a.m.
Okay, thank you for that clarification. And Rebecca?
Vice President Rodenbacher, I forgot to mention the conference attending report form that was discussed at communications today, and I saw Anne Marie or Betsy sent it out. We do all have the updated form. So the change was, before the wording was more generic in terms of does this item deserve further discussion, and you'll see that it was changed to with using this more internally for the board, and that if you feel that the topic needs future discussion, that it get referred to a committee chair, and then the committees are listed there. So, and then if you don't feel that it needs for future discussion, just say no. And we'll work with this form until we decide that something else needs to be created. But wanted to make sure that you use that form. Thank you.
Thank you very much for pointing that out. If there's nothing else, the board next meets in regular session on November 12th here at 5:30, and we are adjourned. Thank you.